Well, guys, after many weeks, summer TV has finally wrapped up. I have finished all the shows that I needed to, and because of that, it is now finally time for me to do my top 10 shows of summer 2019. And look, I'll just tell you right now, this list was not easy at all. This was a crazy summer for TV. Probably the craziest one that I've ever seen, to be honest. I mean, there was so much that was going on here, especially in August. I mean, that's why it took me so long to like get this video out, because August, I mean, there was so much that came out, and I wanted to watch as much as I possibly could to make this list. I ended up watching quite a bunch of stuff for sure, more than I did expect to. There are a couple shows that I unfortunately just didn't get to, but the ones that I did, the ones that I really cared about, I really did try to make time for, and so because of that, I now do have my official list here. But of course, before we get into my initial list, we're going to get into a few honorable mentions. I don't have a ton or anything like that, but of the ones I do have Chuka and Birdie, Lost of Spookies, Swamp Thing, and Pose Season 2. So those are all of my honorable mentions for sure. Swamp Thing was this close to being in my top 10, but it just didn't make it. But with that said, we're now going to get into my top 10. I'm not doing a top 5 this year, as I usually do, because like I said, I did see a lot. I usually do a top 5, but I said, you know what, I want to challenge myself more. I want to do a top 10, so I absolutely did. So we're going to start off with number 10 and Big Little Lies Season 2 was a season of TV that I was pretty skeptical about. While on one hand, I saw a lot of possibilities for what they could do with this show, I also was worried that they were going to tarnish its legacy. I was worried that it was going to be unnecessary. And what we got instead was essentially an epilogue, but one that did feel very rewarding in that way. There's a lot of great wrap-ups for these characters, especially for Bonnie and for Celeste. I think those two characters are written very well this season. Bonnie especially we get into a lot more, and Zoe Kravitz, I mean, always delivers for sure in that show. She was absolutely extraordinary, and Meryl Streep, my god, pretty much just stole the entire thing here. Probably one of her most ferocious and just scary performances to date. And if she somehow is snubbed, like when coming Emmy and Golden Globe season next year, I will be utterly shocked, because I think this is one of the best performances that she's ever given for sure. So unrecognizable in this role. We also had some great stuff dealing with, you know, Jane and her trying to recover from her, her rape and things like that, and really seeing a nice portrayal of it, and seeing what someone like that does go through, and her trying to recover in that way, but also them just trying to move on from everything that's happened. And as a result, we get a really great character-driven, a slower season for sure, but one that was, for me, consistently interesting, one that went directions that I wanted to, and overall expanded these characters in a way that I didn't think that it really needed to. But overall, I felt very satisfied by it. And if this is the end, I am overall satisfied with the way things did wrap up here. I know some people thought it got really cheesy, but for me, I was pretty much invested throughout the entire show. There was never really a moment where I'm like, oh, this didn't really work. There were some things that were a little bit rushed for sure, but I thought that they did a really great job with this season for sure. So number 10 is absolutely Big Little Lies Season 2. Legion Season 3. Oh, what can I say about the show that I haven't? I mean, this show has just been so audacious and weird and out there, and this was perhaps the strangest season yet, but in a really great way. I mean, the way the season was constructed, with the time travel and things like that, and really having its own unique approach to it with, like, the time eaters and all that stuff, I thought was such a cool idea. I love what they end up doing there. Lauren Zai's switch, I thought was a fantastic addition to the show. The relation between her and David, I thought, was really compelling. I really liked the way they went about that for sure, but also getting more into David's past and fully examining, like, what caused David to turn this way. What's causing him to turn more towards evil? Is there a way that they can save him? Does he want to be saved? Those questions are really one of the things that made this season so great. Sure, the visuals and the acting, that's always a highlight. That's always something that's on display, but It's mainly just the narrative, where they ended up taking this show. That's really why it ended up where it does. It's one of those shows where it does things other shows do, but not in the way they do. And I know I've said that a lot, but that's one of the best things about this show. It makes something like a conversation that Sid and David had look so visually stunning in that way. And other shows just wouldn't frame it in that way. And that's one of the reasons I'm going to miss this show as much as I did. But it was a really great final go around of episodes. It was a really fantastic way to wrap up the show, and it's definitely one I am deeply going to miss. Noah Hawley's one of the best showrunners working today. I can't wait to see what he does on Fargo Season 4, but this was a really nice break from that for sure. I love what he was able to do with these 3 seasons of Legion. I'm dearly going to miss it, and for all those reasons, it is definitely number 9. Euphoria for me is the big surprise show of this entire summer. I mean, like I said, I had it at the very bottom of my anticipated list, mainly because A24 and the talent that was involved, I thought could have made it into something really good, but I pretty much thought it would go in, getting my hopes up, not really getting what I thought I was going to, but it turned out to exceed my expectations in basically every way possible. This is such a realistic and raw depiction of adolescence and things like substance abuse and sexuality, but also the sexual desire that we have and how teens want attention and all that kind of stuff. And I think it just did a really great job at really summing up the generation as a whole. I don't think there is a better show out there right now that examines this generation better than Euphoria does. And I mean, not to mention the cast here, oh my god, I mean, Zendaya, one of the best actresses working today after this show for sure. I can confidently say that. She absolutely blew me away here. Hunter Schafer, though, as well, I don't think is getting nearly enough credit as she should, and I think she was also fantastic here. I really loved her character. Jacob Elordi, I mean, what a great comeback for him. He did a great job in this show, and that's not something that I was initially expecting to say going into it for sure, but this show just had a very consistent characters that did a really great job at focusing on each of them, getting us to really know who all of these characters are, but also really placing us in these situations and never really feeling like it's delving into heavy issues just because it wants to. It feels like it needed to happen for the story. The story itself was very compelling. Rue was such an interesting character. The style of the show as well, it had such a unique look and feel to it, and I have to say, it definitely gave me a lot more hope in Sam Levinson as a director. I think I should have given him much more credit last year after Assassination Nation. He definitely has a lot more talent in him, and this show very much did represent that for sure. The show, I think, was a much better look at his capability as a director, and I really did love seeing that here. Euphoria is one of those shows where every single week when it was on, I was just very excited to watch it. It's a show that definitely need to be in the right mood for. It is quite heavy for sure, but it's one that consistently delivered for me. It really did get better and better as it went along, and it becomes, I think, the best teen drama currently on TV right now. I don't really think there's any debate in that because there isn't really a lot of competition, but I think it absolutely is the best one. It definitely is one of the best I think there ever has been, and I really hope that they don't fuck it up in season 2. I think the way things were done here, they did a really great job at laying that groundwork, and I'm just really excited to see the way things worked out. HBO and A24, no surprise, it's a match made in heaven. Couple that with the great performances and some masterful direction by Sam Levinson, ultimately make up one of the best shows of the entire summer, of course being Euphoria at number 8. The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance is the definition of the summer blockbuster that we didn't get this year. This show is all kinds of epic. It's the kind of fantasy that we really do want on TV, but it also does a really great job at expanding the world of Thra and giving us just a better examination at, what this world really is capable of, the different people that populate it, why the Skeksis have this conflict with the Gelflings and things like that, but also getting us to care for these characters a lot more, really giving us a nice window into who each of them are before they do eventually get into this full conflict, and I think they did a really great job with that. The visuals here are some of the best of the entire year. It's definitely visually stunning for sure. It's one of those shows where I just can't praise the visuals enough here. It consistently delivered in that area for sure. I think that the score was phenomenal, the voice acting pretty much all across the map, but especially Nathalie Emmanuel and Simon Pegg, those were the two big standouts of this show for me. Just everything everything about Dark Crystal exceeded my expectations in a way that I really wasn't expecting it to. I think even people that didn't like the show after watching it are going to get on board with it. After this for sure. And so for all those reasons, that's ultimately why it does make up number 7. Probably one of the most visually stunning Netflix shows out there. One of my new favorites for sure, and definitely for that reason alone, definitely deserves a place on this list. Fleabag is a show that I just can't praise enough. It's one of those shows that knows exactly what it wants to do, and it doesn't try to overstay its welcome at all. So hearing that there was going to be a season 2 was something that I really didn't know if they needed, but pretty much from the opening moments, I saw what they were trying to do. This season is about recovery. It's about Fleabag trying to get over the events of what happened in season 1, but also her trying to find love and see if she is capable of doing so, but not so much just a love, more about her loving herself and her embracing some of the things that she's done and trying to move on from it. I mean, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is just so phenomenal in this role. She really does prove why she is a true talent for sure, and I wish I saw her doing a lot more stuff. I know she's doing, like, Killing Eve and things like that, but I need to see her do more stuff after this, because she's so great here. And I also thought that the priest, whoever played, I can't think of his name right now, but whoever played him was such a great addition to the show. Those two had such a fascinating relationship. But also, Sian Clifford, I think, really stepped it up this season. I think that I was very happy to see that she actually was getting that Emmy love that I didn't think that she was going to at all, but she really stepped it up here. And we get a very good examination into Claire and why she continues to stay with her piece of shit husband, and I think they did a really great job with that for sure. It was as short as season 1, but it definitely needed to be. It told the story that it needed to for sure. It definitely did feel very final in that way. It didn't feel like a final season at first, but as it was wrapping up, you really do start to realize, like, yeah, this is a very good way to end the show. It was the season of TV that, as I said, I really did not know that I needed. It really did deliver on all fronts. I don't think it's quite as good as season 1, but it's there by a mile, and overall, I was very impressed with the way Fleabag season 2 turned out for sure, so it is definitely my number 6. Now, last year at this time, Vita was the big surprise for last year. I really was not expecting it to be much of anything, and it turned out to be one of the most compelling dramas on TV. So going into season 2, obviously I do have that worry that it's not going to top season 1, but it actually did. I think season 2 is even better than season 1 because they're able to flesh out these characters a lot more, especially when it comes to Lynn. Lynn definitely goes through a lot more development this season. She's someone who learns to be a little more kind to people. She scales back on some of the more crazy sex stuff that she was doing, and that's really great to see, but also really diving headfirst into Emma and how she is someone who is very damaged and how this causes her to lash out at people, and never really being on the side of either of them, never presenting them as good or bad, showing that these are both very flawed people. They both do make mistakes, but they're trying to get better from it. For Emma, it's about her trying to find love with Nico, who, like I said, was such an amazing addition to this show, to the point where you forgot that she was a new addition. It felt like she'd been there all along, and I loved every single second of this character. I think Roberta Colendrez just did such a fantastic job adding something to the show that just wasn't there before. And then for Lynn, it's her trying to have a legitimate relationship and not be as slutty as she's been in the first season. I think they did a really great job with her overcoming that as well. The chemistry between these two is still off the charts. It also dives more into some hot button issues such as the protesting and things like that, but also giving us a better look at the character of Maudie and seeing if she really does stand with what she's doing and where she ends up going as a character. Is not at all what I was expecting to happen, and they did a really great job with them. The fact that the show just consistently delivered for me as much as it did for 2 seasons now, and the fact that nobody is talking about it, I am still baffled by it. This should be one of the most talked about shows on TV right now, but for some reason it isn't. I really thought season 2 dropping the way it did on Starz would get more people to start talking about the show, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. But either way, it doesn't take away from the quality of the show. It's one of the best on TV right now. It always delivers for me, and it's absolutely my number 5. The Boys was a show that pretty much from the beginning I was so fascinated by. I thought this sounded like such an interesting premise, the idea that superheroes are in real world, but they're not good. They have become corrupted of their power and they're starting to act out and things like that. And I thought because of that, it just sounded so compelling, and it definitely was. This is easily one of the most compelling shows of the entire year. It's anchored by its cast, though, for sure. I mean, Carl Urban, holy shit, he blew me away in the show, giving maybe the best performance of his entire career, just playing such a complex character, someone who is very much hurting in that way, and he has this vendetta against the Supes, and when you eventually get into it and see what he's really dealing with, you really do start to get on board with him in that way. And Urban just really killed it there. Or Jack McQuaid, who I think was definitely another big standout, really getting us into the character of Huey. Probably the most relatable of the bunch for sure with what he is suffering from. And I think they did a really great job with that. Whether it was Erin Moriarty as well as Stargirl, a character that just always delivered for me. Someone who is trying to get over this abuse that's happened to her, but also her realizing what she really signed up for and her trying to become that hero that she's always wanted to be, even if that's not who these guys really are, especially when it comes to Homelander, who is just the worst of the worst. But Anthony Starr just killed it in that role. But it's that conflict especially that really does reel me into the show. Just the idea of where would we fit into all this? If we were in this world, would we be on the side that was naive and thought that these superheroes were, all God and powerful and that they can't do any wrong? Or are we like the Boys where we know that no, these guys are bad and we need to take them out. We can't let them have this power. Or is there a middle ground? And I think this show examined that question very nicely. It definitely did a really great job with that. It was very character driven in that way. The superhero stuff especially, I mean, the action stuff was just fantastic. That one scene on a plane especially, that's one of the most intense things I've seen all year, without a doubt. I think they did a great job with that. Just the way this show went, the characters, the humor, the look, the feel of it, everything was really on point here. And the way things end off in this season, oh my god, I cannot wait to see how season 2 does develop. The Boys is just everything that I pretty much want it to be. And for those reasons and more, it is absolutely my number 4. Chernobyl blew me away in more ways than I could have imagined. This is such a raw and just such a grisly sort of show, and it's one that definitely is going to be very hard to watch for some people, but it's also one that is so deeply fascinating and one that really does show what a tragedy like this can do and how a tragedy like this could have ever happened, because this should have never happened. This should have never been a thing, but the show really does dive deep into why this was a thing. What steps were, what happened? Where could someone have gone so wrong to the point where this happened? What steps did they have to take to pull off this huge disaster? How was this caused? And I think the show gets into it quite well, but also seeing the characters and what they really suffer through and how they were so affected by this, even though some of them were fairly naive about, whether it was Jessie Buckley's character or that poor old woman that lived in that house and just didn't want to leave because she felt tethered to it. I mean, stuff like that, it broke my heart. It really did. And then our main 3 here, I mean, Jared Harris, Emily Watson, Stellan Skarsgård, all 3 of them need to get Emmys as soon as possible. I'm very happy that they did get nominated for sure. I think they all gave the performances of their life here. I absolutely love what they did, and especially when we get into what actually caused this event, it just makes you that much more infuriated for sure. It's one of the most frustrating shows for sure, but in a good way in the sense where it really shows the true implications of what could happen and how someone can really be affected by a tragedy like this and how we can prevent it from ever happening again. It's a very eye-opening show. It's one that you probably do know about Chernobyl, but this gives you a lot more details for sure, and will definitely give you a deeper appreciation for those first responders and for those people who sadly were, lethally affected by this and never were the same again after. But I really do appreciate this show for going there. Chernobyl is just everything that you want it to be. It's one of those shows that, again, it's very hard to watch, but the fact that it went there, the fact that it didn't hold back, and the fact that it told this kind of story, I just can't respect it enough. And so for that reason, it is definitely my number 3. Stranger Things Season 3. You guys know this was my most anticipated show of the entire summer. It was one that I could not wait to see how they were going to deliver, and it exceeded my expectations in more ways than I ever could have imagined. This show just really pulled out all the stops to make this the most epic season yet. Yes, it does take a while to get going, but I feel like it makes it that much more worthwhile. The fact that it does take a while to really delve into this conflict and really showing what's really going on here. These characters are growing up. These characters are starting to change as individuals. And because of that, characters like Eleven, who feel much more comfortable doing human things and, speaking fully and things like that, we really do get to expand them more. Eleven and Max's relationship is still one of my favorite character pairings for any season this year. I loved their friendship in this show, and it was definitely one of my favorite parts of it for sure. I also love everything they did with Steve Dustin in a fantastic edition of Maya Hawke's Robin. Really just brings spunk and energy to the show that we just didn't see before, but also when we eventually get into her character more, becomes one of the best on the entire show for sure. Billy's a much better character this time around, and of course, the finale. The finale just absolutely broke me. It definitely made me cry in more ways than I really was expecting, and I really hope that Season 4 doesn't ruin it. I've heard countless theories of people talking about how Season 4 is going to ruin this show, and I really hope that's not the case. The way they end things off here, it's on a high. I don't think it's ever going to be topped, especially moments like what we did get in the finale. This show really amped up the action. I mean, some of the most intense scenes of the entire show here, just in episode 4 alone, that battle with Eleven and all of them against the Mind Flayer. It's one of the most intense things we've ever seen on this show, but it was just constantly delivering. It really did pull out all the stops to make this the most satisfying season of this show yet. It delivered in more ways than I could imagine. It was far more emotional than I really was expecting. Like I said, I was expecting to be affected by the show, but I was not expecting to wallow up and honestly cry as much as I did here. I cried about like 4 or 5 times throughout the entire season, and I think they did an excellent job with that for sure. This is everything that I pretty much wanted to be. I really hope that Season 4 does deliver, because in the way Season 3 ends, Season 4 is going to be very different for sure, but I really do hope that it does retain the magic that these first 3 seasons have had, this one easily being the best of the bunch, and so for all those reasons, it is definitely my number 2. When They See Us is a highly infuriating, but also a very eye-opening look at a broken system. It really does show what this can do to people who are falsely accused, what this does to their life, how much this affects them, how much it ruins their life, and things like that. But it also is a great look at 5 boys who had so much potential, but had all of that just completely shed away from them because of this one incident that they weren't involved in at all, and it just highly affected me in that way. And yes, I will address the elephant in the room. No, they did not have criminal records. I'm sorry. I messed that up in my review. I thought I should finally address it. I know most of my comments, while you guys enjoy that review, I know a lot of you are talking about those criminal records and how that's not really a thing. So no, they did not have criminal records. I am well aware of that. I definitely did. That was a major fuck up on my part for sure. But regardless, I mean, this show just blew me away in more ways than I ever could have imagined. The 4th episode especially is the best thing I have seen in anything. TV, movies. If it was a movie, it would be the best movie of this year. I mean, just Jareel Jerome's performance especially. The way he's able to transition from this kid that wasn't able to read and essentially wasn't even really a part of the situation. He was just pulled into it because of the fact that he was with them and he was guilty by association, but that he was locked away in prison for years and years while the others were released. He had to stay in there as a grown adult, and him bonding with that guard and the harsh treatment he received from everyone else. I mean, it was just absolutely devastating. but he gives the performance of his life. And it's not just him. I mean, Michael K. Williams, Niecy Nash, Asante Black, I thought was fantastic here. Freddie Myers was fantastic. Javon Adipo. Everyone really does kill it in the show. Even Vera Farmiga and Felicity Huffman, as much as you hate these characters, they were fantastic in the show for sure. Everyone really gave a just career best performance here. It's a raw, definitely very hard to watch look, but it's one that I think is very important for sure. It really does show just how terrible of a situation this really was, and how, similar to Chernobyl, something like this should have never happened. And it does show that things, and it is sadly very timely as well, things like this do still happen in the criminal justice system. It's a very rigged system. You know, people like to think it's a fair system, but this show does definitely show the imperfections of it, and how biased they can be, and how we are very easy to create a narrative and point fingers, even if we know it's not a real narrative, but just to make things more interesting, to get people to care about this story more. You know, we need to create a narrative. It just really affected me in that way. I was so angered by the way that the interrogators were treating these innocent kids who, again, were just 14, 15 years old. They were just they would just happen to be in the park at the time. They didn't even really do anything that wrong. They just happened to be there. I was just so infuriated by the way that went down. So that, combined with how much I cared about these characters, combined with the quality of them, I mean, especially the cinematography, oh my god, it was beautiful, especially in that fourth episode. Again, very hard to watch, but that fourth episode especially has so many standout shots that I can just, they're just ingrained in my mind forever. They're definitely things that I'm never going to forget for sure. It's one of the most eye-opening things I've ever seen. It's definitely a very stunning series. It's one that I expected to love, but never to the level that I did here, and it definitely does show how Ava DuVernay needs to stay with Netflix as long as possible. Whatever she's doing, make it a Netflix project, because her talents were fully utilized in a way that I really haven't seen them done before, and I was overall very impressed by the show. It delivered in every way that I needed to. It is the most effective piece of media that I have seen all year, and for all those reasons and more, it is absolutely my number one. And with that, guys, we have now made it to the end. I know there was a lot of shows to talk about here, but hey, this was a very packed summer for TV. But of course, as always, let me know what shows you guys were, really loved this summer. Was there anything that I left out that you guys really liked, you want me to watch? If there is, I'll try to watch it before the end of the year. Of course, I know the big one was Mindhunter. I really wanted to get to that, but unfortunately, I just didn't have the time. I wanted to try to watch as much as I could. I didn't have the time to binge Mindhunter, unfortunately, but everything else I cannot recommend enough to you guys. Very excited to see what the fall TV season does bring, and I'm happy that this is over, because there was a lot. As much as I love this TV season, it was very overwhelming for sure. But with that, guys, that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys thought of any of these shows. If you have seen them, love to hear your thoughts on them. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.